The lunch rush had already tipped from noisy to breathless when Nia heard the hostess whisper her name over the steam of the espresso wand and the clatter of pans. Table 14. VIP hold, no delay. A cable news anchor talked without sound on the bar TV. A caption ribbon drifted across. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. Nia didn't look at the TV. She cinched her apron strings tighter and glanced toward the floor-to-ceiling glass that faced Alder Street, catching the reflection of a black SUV door opening like a quiet threat. According to the reservation ledger and the kitchen printer that spit up tickets before she even finished reading them, the party of 6 had been booked under Kestrel Ridge Capital. The host had highlighted the note. Dietary restrictions, none. Walk with care. Elderly guest. Additional napkins. No mention of an interpreter. Nia had carried plates through storms of impatience for 6 years. She kept her headphone in her pocket for breaks and her voice even when men in suits mixed up her name. She slid a fresh notebook out of her apron and walked toward the door with the practiced gait of someone who could balance a tray through a hurricane. The first man in wore a gunmetal suit, nose narrow, hair sharp, smile already betraying the math of what he would tip versus what he would demand. The second man was younger, tall, with a tailored jacket that tried too hard to pretend he didn't care about threads. People kept glancing at him as he crossed the dining room, a flicker of recognition that didn't land until a server at the bar mouthed, "That's him." Him, in this city, was Jason Halverson, 32, the app boy who had turned overdraft fees into something like a game, then a savings tool, then an ecosystem of investments that promised to make capitalism more bearable if you let your phone be your conscience. The profile photos were always light-struck. The story always about the hoodie he'd worn to his first board meeting, the way he'd kept his grandmother's photo on his desk. Today, the hoodie was gone. Then came the grandmother. Mia saw the careful way the young woman behind her, an assistant by the look of the iPad, wrapped an arm just under the elbow, creating balance without grabbing. The older woman wore a blue cardigan and flat shoes. Her hair was white and held above the collar like someone had combed the wind right out of it. There were tiny silver shells at her earlobes. Between them, very small behind the ear, the pale beige shape of a hearing aid that wasn't switched on. The woman's eyes moved with a searching intelligence that didn't wait for other people to catch up. Her gaze found Nia. "Good afternoon," Nia said, smiling at each face while her eyes stayed gently with the grandmother. "Welcome to Harbor and Alder. Table 14, this way please." As they passed the host stand, the man with a narrow nose leaned down toward the hostess. "No photos," he said, low but not careful. "Please make sure staff understand this is a private lunch." The hostess nodded too fast. The sound of plates didn't change. Nia led them past diners slicing into scallops and burgers with names too precise to be casual. Table 14 had a view of the harbor and a plant at shoulder height that offered privacy without looking like a barricade. She pulled out the chair that gave the grandmother the best vantage of the room and the window, then placed the folded napkin in her lap herself rather than sliding it across. A pause to make sure the woman saw it coming. The assistant hovered until the older woman flicked fingers that said, "Free me." When Nia set down water, she turned slightly, allowing the light to catch her hands. The wrist bones were thin from years of trays. Her nails were short and clean. Inside the gesture of offering the glass, she signed the simplest of greetings, small enough to be deniable if anyone had objections. "You good? Need help?" The movement was barely there, anchored in the angle of her wrist and the curl of her fingers. The grandmother's eyes sharpened. She looked from hands to face. There was a beat that had the weight of a decade. Then she signed back, small and precise. "Hello. Hungry." "Menus," Nia said, voice gentle, eyes on the older woman's hands. She set a regular menu and then slid a laminated one with larger print under it. The woman nodded once, recognition moving across her features like a cloud letting sun through. The assistant pursed her lips. The man in the gunmetal suit sat like a problem about to be solved. Water for everyone? Nia asked, though glasses were already on the table. Any allergies we should know about today? She was looking at each of them equally now, eyes doing the dance they did for white patrons and patrons who saw her skin before they saw her service. Then she looked back to the grandmother and signed slowly while speaking. I know some sign. If you want, I can order food with you. We have it handled, the gunmetal man said, clipped. We've got black truffle pasta. She loves that. We can ask her, Nia replied, not pushing her voice. She saw the place where older women were made to nod along. She tried to give the woman a small shield without making it a spectacle. It's good today. The chef's got oyster mushrooms that are taking it personally. That drew a smile from the younger man, Jason. She's funny, he told the assistant, perhaps to release tension. Then, to Nia. We'll need a bit of space. Big day. The assistant held up the iPad so the grandmother could see photos of dishes. The older woman looked at the screen like it was a child waving. She lifted her hand and signed beautifully, the way people do when they have thought with their hands for longer than you have been alive. Tea. Lemon. Not the sweet one. Tea. Lemon, Nia repeated aloud, while signing the words back, gratitude blooming quietly between them. I can bring honey on the side, in case. The assistant lowered the tablet, chagrin passing quickly back into control. It's fine, she told Nia. We have this. Of course, Nia said, stepping back. She met the grandmother's eyes once more and, with the minimal movement that signals discretion, signed, If you need anything, call me. She pointed to her name tag in case the older woman wanted to catch it. Nia. The grandmother's lips pressed together with humor. She traced the name in the air with a finger. Ni-ah. Then she placed a palm over her heart. Thank you. According to Nia's hourly log, she pushed through 14 tables in the next 20 minutes. She could recall only flashes of the VIP table when asked later by the investigator from Human Resources. The gunmetal man keeping his elbows tight while he checked his phone. The assistant chewing her pen cap when the grandmother looked away. The grandson laughing with the reflex of someone relieved to be off camera. The grandmother herself asked for salt with a simple gesture that turned into a smile when Nia set down the little dish and didn't hover. It was between the tea arriving and the oysters that the first thing happened. A piece of paper, folded twice, slid out from the grandmother's sleeve as she reached for her teacup. It fell into the soft tent of the napkin on her lap. Her hand covered it with a calm that came from years of being underestimated. In the small window of time between her grandson looking toward the window and the assistant responding to a text, the grandmother lifted her eyes to Nia and signed with the brevity of urgency. Later. You. Nia glanced at the assistant, at the man in the suit, at Jason. She moved to refill the water glass, her left hand accustomed to the arc of the pitcher while her right hand, palming a dropped fork she pretended to retrieve, let the folded paper nestle under the cuff of her sleeve. A napkin was straightened, a glass was wiped. She kept walking. In the service corridor, behind the steel door with the porthole glass, the air smelled like butter and the metal dust of the dish machine. Nia stood with her back to the wall, heartbeat registering in her throat. She knew better than to open a guest's note. She also knew from her mother that there were moments when you didn't keep rules made for normal days. She unfolded the paper just enough to see handwriting that didn't shake. The letters were even and deliberate, as many deaf writers are when they have learned English as a second language. The top of the page had a date, 3 weeks earlier. It had a notary stamp. It looked like a letter to be delivered to a law firm if certain conditions were not met. The first 2 lines made her breath lag. To the board of Halverson Holdings. I, Lillian May Halverson, of sound mind as assessed by Dr. Mira Solton on April 2nd, report attached. Hereby state my voting instructions regarding the Class 5 share reserved to the founder's family and delivered to me by my late husband. I instruct that no sale or merger of the core platform proceed unless measures for accessibility and fair lending protections proposed by the Community Coalition are adopted. If the board fails to provide a qualified ASL interpreter and reasonable accommodations at any meeting where these issues are decided, I appoint my proxy as described below. Attached. Nia turned the paper delicately, the way you check your own pulse. Behind it was a copy of an evaluation letter from a geriatrician. Clean language, no hedges. Ms. Halverson demonstrates full decision-making capacity. Her hearing impairment does not equate to cognitive decline. There was also a separate page that held 3 lines and a signature that looked like a person who had signed against wind. Proxy appointment. If I am denied an interpreter, or if I cannot access communication, I appoint Deaf Access Center legal advocate to act as my proxy. Alternate. Any competent ASL proficient adult present who is witness to my attempt to participate. Nia's cheeks warmed. Her mother had signed forms like these when administrators mistook silence for confusion. The law named capacity. Ignorant people replaced it with their assumptions. A shadow blocked a sliver of light. The service door cracked open and the assistant slid in, eyes landing on Nia's hand faster than breath. "Sorry," the assistant said, words too sweet for their follow-up. "Miss Halverson is asking for the lemon again. Did you take something from the table?" Nia slid the folded paper back into her sleeve until it lay flat against her forearm like a bandage. She picked up a glass of sliced lemon wheels. "Just refreshing beverages," she said. "I'll be right out." "Right," the assistant said. She lingered just long enough to make it clear she wasn't buying the finishing school tone. Then she was gone, leaving a whiff of expensive perfume and pressure. On the way back to 14, Nia's eyes scanned for her manager. Managers had to be brought in when legal documents entered the room. Michelle stood by the wait station, line of worry across her forehead like she was learning long division in public. She'd spotted the name Halverson and had been calculating exposure since the host whispered it. Nia caught her sleeve and spoke without moving her lips much. "She passed me a letter," Nia said. "It's about a proxy and an interpreter. It looks valid. Can we get video interpreting on the floor, or at least—" "Not out front," Michelle hissed, eyes darting. "Please, serve, don't solve. If they want an interpreter, the party can—" "They didn't bring one, and the letter says, later," Michelle said. "Please." "We have 3 other tables that can tip out the difference if this goes south." Money was the language managers used to keep doors from slamming on them. Nia knew the calculus. She also knew what it did to carry someone's words they couldn't force into the air themselves. At the table, the grandmother looked at Nia's elbow like her eyes could see through fabric. Nia set the lemons down. She used her paws to sign one word. Hold. She tapped her name tag once, lightly, a promise. The meal moved forward. Oysters disappeared beneath their own brine, the truffle pasta arrived, and the older woman pushed it aside after 2 bites, making a face of gentle mischief. Nia caught the face and slipped the note into a fresh napkin in her apron. The gunmetal man leaned toward the grandson, voice narrowing into the tone of someone who has a plan they're trying to make sound like your idea. "We can't wait for the coalition meeting," he said. "We need the vote this quarter. We announce on Tuesday. If we don't get her consent, we can document that we tried. There's the capacity exam from last year." "I don't want to steamroll her," Jason said, looking around the room like he knew who he was supposed to be. "She raised me. Also, the coalition is loud right now." "They're loud because they're losing," the man said. "We're not an NGO. We're a platform at war with banks that want us dead. Growth buys the time to do the right thing. Growth now means the shop in 2 years can actually fix overdraft dessert issues instead of just tweeting about them." "Then get an interpreter and we'll talk to her," Jason said, decisive for the first time. "Today if you can. She'll do what's right if she understands." Nia filed the sentence in a quiet corner of her mind, now labeled leverage. She would need it in an hour. When the plates were cleared and the assistant took a selfie with the grandmother pretending not to be in it, Nia slipped into the staff washroom and pulled out her phone. She texted Tiff, who had worked at Legal Aid downtown, before answering phones for vet bills paid in cash by clients suspicious of paperwork. Need to reach Deaf Access Center for urgent proxy. Client is big family. No interpreter at meeting. Patron is deaf elder. Can we do VRI for free or legal presence? A bubble appeared almost instantly. Tiff. Say less. I'm calling Sasha now. Stay with her if you can. Document request for interpreter. Also, if suit tries to confiscate papers, film. Nia tucked her phone away with the relief of having called for backup, even if the cavalry was an overworked lawyer who wore scuffed Vans in court. She washed her hands as slowly as hospital staff do when they don't want to go back to the room, and then went back to table 14 with the small steels of resolve clicking together in her chest. As she approached, she saw the assistant leaning into the grandmother's ear, speaking loudly, the way hearing people sometimes do when they think volume equals respect. The grandmother turned her head to look at the assistant's mouth, eyes narrowing. The assistant moved her mouth faster, syllables smearing. The grandmother lifted a hand with a quiet sharpness that told Nia she'd been polite for 60 minutes and had reached her limit. Sign, it said, and do not shout at me. Mia stepped in with a professional smile. Would anyone like dessert menus? She asked. We have lemon tart. Excellent. Kind of a poem. Then, to the grandmother, hands asking permission as much as offering help. I can interpret, but I am not certified. I can place a video call to a certified interpreter now, free from my phone. Your choice. The grandmother's glance ticked to her grandson. He was busy telling the gunmetal man that he didn't like the press release draft. She looked back at Nia, tiny smile blooming at the corner of her mouth. She nodded once. Yes. I believe she's fine, the assistant said, voice taking up too much space. We have legal documents to go over and she asked for an interpreter, Nia said calmly. I heard Mr. Halverson say this could happen today. If you'd like, I can set up a video call so she can understand what's being presented. She kept her tone gentle. The words were knives if you wanted them to be. Offered as napkins, they were harder to reject without looking like you wanted stains. Jason looked over then, mouth opening in a reflex that might have been, yes, of course. The gunmetal man got there faster. That won't be necessary, he said. We have her consent from the last meeting and we're on a schedule. There's no requirement for... There is, Nia said, as if reading a menu. ADA requires effective communication, especially for a legal decision that affects her rights. I'm happy to help set it up. It can take 5 minutes to connect. She looked at Jason, not the man who spoke like invoices. You mentioned you wanted to get her consent today, with an interpreter. It would be easy to do that now. The gunmetal man's jaw flexed. Jason pulled his chair closer to his grandmother's. I did say that, he said. Let's do it. We'll pay any fee. What do you need? Wi-Fi and 2 minutes, Nia said. Michelle, she called to her manager, who had been pretending to polish the stemware like it had secrets. Can we use the private alcove near 15? This is a reasonable accommodation. Michelle blinked, cheeks losing color at the words reasonable accommodation. That suite of laws could move mountains or topple restaurants depending on how they were wielded. Of course, she said, the training rising beneath fear. Yes, right this way. In the alcove, the light fell soft and the hum of the room dropped to the friendly buzz of a refrigerator 2 doors away. Nia placed her phone on the table and opened the video relay app she kept next to her music and calculator. She tapped in the Deaf Access Center contact Tiff had texted her. The screen bloomed into a woman with gray hair and a bun, eyes kind. The caption below her window read, Sasha, RID certified. Sasha signed hello, fingers precise. Nia signed back that she was hearing but ASL familiar, had a deaf client at a restaurant needing to discuss consent for a business decision, urgent, and that the client had a letter naming rights to a proxy. Sasha nodded, her face adjusting into that, what do you need from me, openness that saves lives in quiet ways. The gunmetal man shifted, as if a different floor tile should be under his chair. He lined up pens he didn't need and cleared his throat. We should keep this informal, he said. No need to record. We will record, Jason said. For Grandma, if she wants. Grandma, is that okay? He exaggerated his mouth in a way hearing people sometimes remember to do, looking to Nia with a glance that said, help me get this right. Nia signed his words and Sasha shaped them into their correct grammar. The grandmother looked at the phone's interpreter, then at her grandson. She nodded. Record. She tapped the video icon on the corner of Nia's phone with a finger that had picked berries and scolded bankers. What followed was not a courtroom. It was tea and breath and the weight of words traveling across a table that had seen laughter and deals, but rarely these two at once. Sasha interpreted with the ease of someone who had lived in this river for years. The grandmother asked Jason to explain what he was asking her to agree to. He told her about growth and lanes and regulators and getting eaten alive if they didn't move. The grandmother listened with an expression that said, "I know the price of speed." He told her about the offer from a larger firm that would buy theirs by Tuesday. The man in the gunmetal suit called it a merger. The grandmother's eyes on Sasha's lens, then on her grandson, sharpened into a future only she had lived long enough to parse. The assistant put a thick sheaf of papers on the table. Sasha interpreted, "This is a consent form for the sale of the controlling platform and a waiver of certain voting rights in the event of an emergency." Nia watched the grandmother's face and tried not to think of her own mother in hospital rooms where doctors asked, "Do you understand?" again and again, while not understanding themselves. Lillian, that's the name on the letter and the name her grandson used softly now, lifted her hand, palm low, fingers open, the universal gesture for wait. She reached into the sleeve of her cardigan and pulled out nothing. Nia realized the stratagem then. The decoy letter had been waiting to be passed earlier, so the real one would remain where it was needed for this moment. Lillian tapped the napkin on the table. Nia recognized the shape through fabric. She moved to her side, slowly, so the motion didn't look like a trick. Lillian slid the napkin into Nia's waiting palm. Nia unfolded the paper enough to see the signature and the words she had scanned earlier, then handed it back to Lillian. Lillian lifted her chin, eyes on Sasha. The interpreter nodded. Proceed. Lillian signed, "I am not incompetent because I do not hear. I asked for an interpreter at the last meeting. You brought me a pen. Today, my server brought me an interpreter." She looked at Nia then, the warmth in that glance making Nia straighten so fast her bones remembered childhood posture drills. Lillian continued, "I have a voting share, 1. It is heavy. My condition: if you want my yes, you adopt the community plan. Cap fees. Pause debt collection in emergencies. Build deaf support into your product. Increase access in zip codes redlined out of banks. If you need to sell to do this, you can, but you will not sell our users to a lender that treats poverty as a product. If you cannot commit, then my answer is no, and my proxy is appointed." The gunmetal man began to talk. Words tripping over each other to wrap this into constraints and inevitable tides. How the best interests of shareholders required. "Mark," Jason said quietly. That was his name. Mark. A career fixer, whose job was to make everything look like it had been the plan all along. Let her finish. Lillian set the paper flat in the middle of the table, the notary's seal catching light. She placed her palm on it like a stone on a grave. She signed. "There is one more thing. My husband gave the share to me as a check on his worst decisions. He respected me. He told me, 'You are my hearing aid when money speaks too loudly.' I kept this letter." She looked at the assistant then, not unkindly. "You have done your job. The job of a granddaughter is to tell the truth when the room tries to sell her silence." The assistant's cheeks reddened. She looked down. Nia almost felt sorry for her and then remembered the loud words in the grandmother's ear. Sasha kept her face neutral, on task. She signed to Nia, "Ask if they will provide an interpreter at the board meeting. Make them say yes on camera." Nia swallowed. She'd promised herself not to lead, and then recognized there are days when leading is only telling a room to listen. "Ms. Halverson asks whether a qualified interpreter will be provided at the board meeting where this will be decided," she said, signing as she spoke. Jason answered without looking at Mark. "Yes," he said. "Of course, we should have done that already. I'm sorry, Grandma." He sounded young for a moment, both regretful and defiant toward the part of himself that measured apology as weakness. "We'll do it right." Lillian studied her grandson's mouth. She signed something slower, with hands that had always been precise. Sasha's voice softened. I love you. Do not let the money tell you your ears are yours. Mark swallowed something he had been meaning to say. He reached for the papers with a show of helpfulness that didn't touch the table. Weeking calendar for Monday, he said. The sale is Tuesday. This can all proceed as... Monday is short notice for the Community Coalition to review the proposal, Nia said before she could stop herself, then wanted to eat the words back. She wasn't counsel. She was a black woman at a table where even her competence at carrying 4 plates would be doubted on a bad day. She felt her manager's attention like a hand on her shoulder. Who are you exactly? Mark asked, turning the full beam of someone used to recasting women into props. What is your role beyond server? Because it seems you're stepping beyond it. Jason didn't like it. Nia saw it. He sat a little forward. She's the one who made sure my grandmother could participate today, he said. She's the only one in this room who walked in thinking about grandma, not the deal. Nia glanced at Michelle, who stood half in the doorway, ready to pull her out of the room if this turned into something that might end in a write-up. Michelle looked torn between the lawsuit she feared and the sense something else, bigger, was breaking open. Sasha signed to Nia small. Ground it, document, record their commitment. Get copies of all papers grandma passes to you. Keep chain of custody. Bring this to Deaf Access Center today. Nia nodded. The grandmother raised an eyebrow at her as if to say, see? And then smiled in a way that made Nia think of how her mother had smiled when she had spelled out, at 6, that the dog was not allowed to eat grapes. They set Monday afternoon for a meeting. They said the words interpreter and accessible. The assistant typed. The recorder light glowed red. The tea cooled. The window pulled in a slow wash of harbor light. When the party rose to leave, Nia walked beside the grandmother, half a step behind. The way you do when you're both supporting and honoring. Lillian touched Nia's wrist. She signed, take the letter to Deaf Access Center now. They will know what to do. If they are clever with excuses, then she glanced toward her grandson and signed with humor. Nia felt like a secret. He is not bad. He is busy. Busy is a kind of death. Nia smiled. She kept a small distance as they crossed the dining room. Conversations quieted, then resumed like waves around a rock. Jason paused at the host stand. He said he'd like to pick up the check. Mark made a show of looking offended that the restaurant would let them pay. They sorted it with credit cards that looked heavier than they were. At the door, Jason turned back. Thank you, he said, eyes on Nia. It was not the kind of thank you that came with a customer's smirk. It was unsteady, like discovering a crucial mistake and being grateful to someone who caught it. We'll be in touch. Let me get your contact, Michelle said instantly, stepping forward with a little notepad that she would later keep with the precious things she doesn't put in the drawer. Gift cards, a photo of her mother, the emergency number of her child's school. She wrote down an email. Mark gave a card because he collected the air people breathe. They left. It was like closing a door on a weather system. Nia stepped into the alley behind the restaurant where the delivery trucks breathed diesel, and the crates of vegetables waited like green punctuation marks between sentences of labor. She dialed the number Tiff had sent. The call clicked and a voice answered with the tone of someone who has 10 fires and a plan for each. Deaf Access Center, Sasha speaking. It's Nia, from the restaurant. I have the letter. Bring it here, Sasha said. Now. We'll scan and secure it, and I'll send a copy to the family's counsel CC'd to you as witness. If they try to call the copy fake later, we'll have timestamps. Get here with a witness if possible, and take photos of the envelope, the letter, everything. Nia craned her neck back toward the restaurant. In the kitchen window, she could see Michelle making the universal face that mixes worry with, we'll cover your tables. Michelle opened the back door, head out. You taking your break now? She asked. Code for, go and be quick, and I'll tell anyone who asks you, vanished in smoke. I need 10 minutes, Nia said. Take 20 and blame me, Michelle said. According to the security camera on Alder Street, Nia jogged across the light at 5th, hair breaking loose from the knot she kept it in for work. She twisted her apron into a burrito and stuffed it into her tote. She walked fast past the vitamin store and into the office building that had one working elevator and a stairwell that smelled like someone had tried to smoke a vape and failed. Deaf Access Center occupied a narrow second-floor suite. Posters in the lobby said things like, "Content is not accessible if the invite is the only thing translated." There were flyers about housing and cards with QR codes that led to interpreters who charged less than their worth because people worth paying were always asked to be free. Sasha stood behind a desk in a t-shirt that said, "See me," in plain print. Her bun was not slack now. It was a knot you could tie a boat to. She took the letter and laid it on a bright piece of paper, like a small ceremony. A triage line formed behind Nia. Parents with kids who were tired of waiting. An elder who signed slowly and spoke at the same time, if only to remind herself of something. "This is clean," Sasha said, scanning the letter into a feed that took it into a hard drive somewhere past the cloud and into a vault regimen that had saved more than one worker from being shredded by paperwork excuses. "We'll send copies to the board secretary, council, and to you. Also to your manager if you want cover." "She'll want it," Nia said. "And is there any way someone can be at their meeting Monday?" "I'll be there," Sasha said. "If they try anything, we'll call the press. But let's not threaten. We make the room safe and assume someone still wants to do the right thing until proven otherwise. Do you want to be there? As witness?" Nia swallowed. She thought of the tables and the tips and the schedule Michelle would have to scramble. She also thought of her mother's hands spelling courage to her at a kitchen table with a chipped fork and late rent, and the smile that said, "Go anyway." "Yes," she said, "if my manager will let me." "We'll call her," Sasha said, already dialing. Monday happened with rain, as if the air needed to be cleaned for what would be said. Harbor and Alder had a chalkboard near the bathroom that the servers used to write messages about clean hands and the day's soup. Someone had written with a floury finger, "Be kind to the dishwasher. They keep your secrets." Someone else had added, "And your health." A pair of tourists photographed it like they'd found a poem. Michelle had given Nia the afternoon off. "Bring me back a victory I can tell my niece about," she said. "We'll cover your shifts. Don't get fired for me, but don't not go and regret it." The Halverson Holdings boardroom took up the corner of a building that had been a bank before banks stopped liking marble. According to the building directory, law firms and a venture capital firm owned by a man named after a bird now leased various floors. The carpet ate the sound of sneakers the way money often does. The boardroom door was glass because transparency looks good, even when it means you can see who you aren't. Nia stood against the wall at first, letting the room arrange itself. She watched as people in suits took their places around a table that could have been a runway for small planes. A man in a blazer that had cost rent for 3 months checked the camera angle twice. Jason stood by a chair near the head, mouth tight. Mark set a stack of binders down with care, the way you might put down something that could break and cost more than your job. Lillian entered on her own, cane tucked under her arm like a prop from another life. She wore the same cardigan, the blue a little brighter under the lights. She looked around the room, took in faces the way flowers confirm weather. Sasha walked beside her, small under the tall light fixtures, carrying her steady face like armor everyone else should have worn. A court reporter with the portable stenography machine sat ready. There was a video screen up and running. The remote lay face up, a sign someone had learned. Jason pulled out his grandmother's chair. His hand was gentle, that was true. Nia clocked it. The truth mattered. He turned, caught sight of Nia by the wall, and something like relief flickered across his face. He came over. "Thank you for coming," he said. A half smile warmed his face and then retreated into worry. "I'm sorry you're in this. I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry for how you can do right now," Nia said. She didn't smile. She knew smiles were sometimes used to erase the line you'd just drawn. That's enough. He nodded like that had been a benediction and returned to his chair. The board chair, a woman with hair the color of precise iron, called the meeting to order. She mentioned a merger proposal. She said words like synergies and forward-looking, and disclaimers in a voice that had trained itself not to waver when men frowned. Sasha interpreted. She did not soften jargon. Lillian watched her hands like movies. At the edge of the room, a journalist Nia recognized from a paper that fewer people paid for now, scrawled in shorthand, eyes flicking up at moments when the room forgot what the public might understand. Mark stood, presented a deck. He spoke about growth and market share and the competitor that was both savior and sharp. He did not mention the parts of the large firm's offerings that had been flagged by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for practices that skimmed money off the poor like oil off soup. The journalist raised a hand. The board chair permitted a single question later, things like that. When the presentation ended, the board chair turned to Lillian. There was a pause that held in it the weight of years of not pausing for people like her. The chair said, as if practicing something gentle, "Ms. Halverson, we are pleased you can join us. Would you like to make a statement or ask any questions?" Her mouth moved carefully as she spoke. Sasha's hands caught the words and turned them into meaning. Lillian did not look at Mark. She looked at her grandson. She signed. "Explain to me the protections for the people we say we serve. The ones the community coalition asked for. Show me in writing." There was a rustle of paper. A binder opened. Mark's composure wavered, then returned. "We're committed to launching an accessibility initiative post-merger. The task force will be..." "No," Lillian signed. "Not committees. Commitments. Caps on APR for short-term. Fee transparency. Emergency pauses without penalty. Deaf access across all customer service lines." "Show me." The room looked to Mark. He looked to Jason. Jason looked at the board. He had that expression he wore in press photos when asked about regulation. Earnest, slightly harried, like a man trying to hide the bruise of ambition with empathy. He exhaled, stepped away from the table and came closer to his grandmother, placing himself within her field of view. "Grandma," he said, mouth crisp, "I want this merger because I don't want to get crushed and lose what we built. They can't absorb us and make us predatory unless we let them. We can write into the terms the protections you're asking for. I didn't..." He glanced at Mark, then at the lawyer at the end of the table. "I didn't realize those weren't in the current draft. That's on me." Mark began to protest. The lawyer shot him a look that said, "Not now." The board chair folded her hands. "If we amend the term sheet to include these provisions, we risk losing the offer," she said. "They've indicated little appetite for price changes and conditionalities. They want our brand halo without our constraints." "Then the answer is no," Lillian signed, calm as sidewalk chalk. She reached into her bag and placed the letter on the table like a quiet alarm. The notary seal shone again. She didn't hold it. She let it be itself. "Our counsel has reviewed," Mark began. Sasha raised a hand to pause interpretation of protest. She spoke to the room, her voice the flat kindness of a nurse telling a doctor to wash his hands. "Ms. Halverson has named a proxy in the case of denial of effective communication. Today you have provided an interpreter. The record shows she has capacity and a plan. Please respond to the plan, not to assumptions about if she understands you. She understands." Silence grew. Not awkward, but like a tree. The board chair nodded slightly to Sasha, then turned to the lawyer. "What is the legal weight of the Class 5 in her hands?" The lawyer coughed. He was not the type to fumble. "The founder created it to prevent mission drift. It requires affirmative familial consent for a sale of core assets. If Ms. Halverson votes no, the sale cannot proceed under the current structure." He spoke without heat. Alternatively, the board could attempt to override in court, but given the document's clarity, he looked at the letter, and the capacity evaluation, the risk of reputational harm is significant. Jason pressed his palms together, thinking. You could see the boy who had built things in his room and liked the way they whirred when his grandmother nodded. What if we extracted the protections as preconditions? We go back to them and say, we need accessibility and fee caps or it's no deal. They will walk, Mark said. He looked like a man watching a bonus disappear in front of him. We're in a soft moment. We need the cash. We've been servicing the accounts of people who bring money on the 31st when the rent's due on the 1st. We believe in them. The numbers don't when under stress. Then we don't sell, Jason said. He said it like someone discovering they were allowed to say no. We build smaller. We accept slower growth. We accept maybe dying with honor. He smiled without joy. We become an NGO you complain about, or we find other money that doesn't require us to become the very thing we were built to fight. And we build the commitments you asked for anyway, before any sale. The board chair looked interested in the flavor of this courage. Can we survive 6 months without the merger, she asked. The CFO, a woman with a braid like rope, nodded slowly, numbers falling through her mind like beads. If we cut executive bonuses and flatten marketing spend, yes, we'll need a bridge. Mark laughed, small. It was not kind to himself. You're going to kill us with virtue. You are going to kill us with speed, the board chair said, voice even. She looked at Lillian. Miss Halverson, if we commit in writing, now, to the protections you have outlined, will you conditionally agree that if we find a buyer that accepts these within a quarter, you will not unreasonably withhold a cent? Sasha made the words more humane in her hands than they were in the air. Lillian listened, then signed, precise. Yes, protect them now, stop the bleeding, help the poor first. The rich will be fine. Jason smiled then, full, embarrassed by his own relief. He reached for his grandmother's hand. She let him. He squeezed, then looked at Nia. He did not wave her into the frame. He gave her a nod that felt like a promise to himself. The board moved to a vote on adopting the protections. The motion passed. It was not unanimous. Nothing real ever is. The journalist's pen flitted like a small, excited bird. The camera recorded. Sasha breathed in and out, shoulders finally lowering. Nia watched the room become something else. Not a miracle, not suddenly good. Just a room where the decision had shifted by the weight of one woman's letter and another woman's hands. After, in the hallway where the carpet resumed eating footsteps, Mark approached Nia. He had turned down his shine but not his edges. You inserted yourself, he said. It wasn't a question. I interpreted for a deaf elder who asked me to, Nia said. You were going to decide for her. He held her gaze. He prepared to say something clever. He didn't. You made my job harder, but perhaps that is what my job needs. He looked past her at the wall where a photograph of the founder in a carpenter's apron hung. You should be careful. Rooms like this can swallow people who teach them too much at once. I have a manager who checks if I ate lunch and a friend who can get 3 lawyers into a broom closet in 10 minutes, Nia said. And I don't swallow rooms. I serve them. That's different. His laugh was genuine and brief. He nodded once. Fair. Jason found them. He looked like someone who would sleep tonight, tired in a way that costs less than the alternative. We're setting up a meeting with the coalition tomorrow, he said to Nia. I'd like to invite you and Sasha, if you're willing. He looked at Mark. We're also setting aside a fund for interpreter training for our staff. We've been acting like accessibility is a favor. It's the job. Sasha had already drifted down the hall with Lillian, letting grandmother and grandson have a quiet moment without making the situation into a parade. Nia stood for a second, looking at the door, and felt the joint sensation of being too small and exactly the right size. When Lillian reached Nia again, she pressed a piece of paper into her hand with the surreptitious elegance of someone who had always known how to move in rooms that asked her to be quiet. Nia looked down. It was a recipe card. On it, in slanted writing, was a note. For when you think you do not have a voice, sometimes hands are louder. Thank you. The recipe on the other side was for lemon tart. The coalition meeting took place in a church basement with coffee that tasted religious and donuts that tasted like apologies. Folding chairs talked when you shifted. The air smelled like the choir had been here yesterday. People clapped when Lillian walked in. She blushed like a girl. She sat in the front row because her granddaughter told her people sit in front when they go to testify. The granddaughter wasn't there. Busy has many doors. According to a flyer taped to the wall, the coalition had been fighting for 6 years for lending practices that didn't turn misfortune into permanent map lines. They had petitioned, marched, and shown up at council hearings to speak into microphones that sometimes were turned on. They had been told to wait for better times and different budgets. Jason stood up and spoke publicly, which was different from statements on letterhead. He looked restless, then settled. He detailed the commitments: fee transparency, emergency pauses, strict caps on APR for micro advances, and a distinct accessibility unit run by people it would serve. He promised to publish their call center stats with ASL interpretation wait times next to them. The room did not cheer because people who have been used watch to see if you know the cost of your promises. Then Lillian signed. She signed about her husband and his share, and the day she learned the feeling of a train passing without sound. She signed about being treated like furniture by well-dressed men who like to talk about innovation. She signed about how her grandson paid for her hearing aids and also sometimes forgot to look at her when he spoke. She signed about the letter and how she had kept it, like a story you don't tell until the moment it can be heard. Nia interpreted, her hands catching up to each sign and making it travel. She kept her voice even and soft. She did not turn the room into a stage. She made it a conversation where a city could be better people in each other's company. After, a man from a neighborhood association asked a question with a tremor in his throat. "Miss Halverson," he said, "why did you choose a server to carry your letter? No offense. I mean, why not your grandson or your lawyer?" He looked at Nia, embarrassed by the casual disrespect baked into his curiosity. Lillian looked at Nia's hands, then at her face. She signed, simple. Because she looked at me when she spoke. Because she knew to ask before touching my arm. Because she did not put her voice over me. Because the women who carry food in rooms like this have always carried news as well. Someone in the second row pressed their hands in the air, the death clap, sparkling above both women and not touching either. News did what it does when it finds a story that behaves like water in drought. It carried the headline fast. Deaf grandmother blocks sale, demands protections. Comments were kind until they weren't, but the story held enough weight to stand a few kicks. The lawyer at the bureau who had filed the complaint against the buyer sent an email that said, in effect, "We'll be watching." A teacher at the community college who had been told there wasn't room in the budget for an interpreting program forwarded the story to the dean with a note that said, in effect, "Try that again." Halverson Holdings adopted the protections publicly. They wrote them into their marketing with care not to turn it into a heroic story about a CEO's heart. They put Lillian's name in the statement once, the way you put salt in cake, and left it. They didn't sell. They cut executive bonuses and some glossy ad campaigns, and they hired 2 community liaisons, one of them deaf, and a half-dozen interpreters contracted on retainer. They built features into the app that told first-gen immigrants the loans they were being offered were traps, and offered them alternatives with clear language. They made it harder to be bad. They didn't save the world. They kept their share of the part they could touch cleaner. Nia kept waitressing. She did not become a policy staffer. She sat on a community advisory panel that paid a stipend. She sent to her mother. She learned to sleep a little easier. Her manager, Michelle, got the photo with the chalkboard quote into a local magazine. She wrote employee schedules with little notes in the margins like, "Saw you handle the Friday storm like a saint. Take Sunday night?" She didn't say saint in the way church did. She said it thinking of Nia closing the alcove door gently. One afternoon weeks later, Nia saw Lillian's grandson at the back table again, this time with no entourage, just a notebook and the lemon tart recipe on the table. He asked for Nia by name. He ordered tea with lemon, not sweet. He told her they had found a different investor who would accept the caps and the accessibility fund in exchange for less drama. He laughed, quick and tired. "Turns out there's money in not being a jerk," he said. "Who knew?" "You knew," Nia said. "You needed proof." "My grandmother needed me to prove I could listen," he replied, looking past her at the window like it might cue forgiveness. "Thank you for giving us today. I mean, for giving her the room to give it to us." He reached into his bag and pulled out a small envelope. It was not heavy. "From her," he said. "Not money. Don't do the face. It's a card. I'm not trying to pay you for..." He stopped, disassembled his sentences, and rebuilt them. "I don't know how to say thank you to a person who changed a day that changed a lot of days. But I can try to be a better son of a granddaughter, and a better employer of people I don't know yet." Nia took the card. She didn't open it at the table. She tucked it inside her apron with a small nod. She brought him his tea and lemon tart. He ate quietly, the way people do when they have been given permission to rest. At shift's end, stool beneath her, and the bartender telling a story about a couple who had come in arguing about pickles, Nia opened the card. It held the printout of a photo. Lillian at her kitchen counter, cutting lemons under a window full of plants. On the back, the same spare hand wrote, "Next time bring your mother. We will eat in quiet that is ours." There was also a sentence at the bottom in careful print. "Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage." It made Nia laugh aloud, startling the bartender. Lillian had begun to watch videos of social justice stories. She had opinions. Weeks became months, the way dishes become clean and then dirty again on a faithful cycle. On a cold morning in late autumn, Nia waited for the bus, hands warming themselves in her armpits. A woman with a toddler asked if the 23 had already come. It had. They would wait together. Sometimes the backbone of a city is the unremarkable moment two strangers decide to share inconvenience without ceremony. A notification thunked her phone. It was a clip from the coalition's new video channel. It opened with a montage of the city's faces, the ones you see when you look up from your own survival. A barber lining up a kid's fresh cut. A nurse in a blue mask tilting her head to hear better. An older woman laughing without sound. It was a video about the commitments and how they mattered, and how the lines between roles were porous when you decided they were. Nia watched until the bus turned the corner. She looked up. The bus driver saw her lift a finger. He stopped. She boarded. She found a seat and let the city hold her like a uniform she was proud to wear even when it chafed. The world would not know her name. Some days the world would call her Honey by mistake and ask if she would smile because it was Friday. But she had been in a room where hands changed policy, and she had carried a letter like a note passed in class with a joke that would get you through a test. She had been introduced in a coalition meeting as the person who made sure words traveled. It was enough. Later, in the quiet of her apartment, where the heater clicked like it was trying, Nia pulled out the recipe card and ran her finger over the indentations of the ink where Lillian had pressed firmly enough to make it count. She placed it next to her mother's photo on the shelf with the small stone she had picked up from the beach on the day they had gone to the county fair and gotten sunburned anyway. Outside, someone honked as if the light would obey. Inside, Nia laughed a little, then breathed out slow. She closed her eyes. She thought of Lillian's hand signing, "We are not noise. We are signal." She thought of the cold morning the merger didn't happen. She thought of the tiny notary seal staring up like a moon. When she opened her eyes, she wrote a message in the staff group chat. "If anyone wants to learn beginner sign, Sasha's doing a class Thursday night. The restaurant could become somewhere else if people like us decided that was the job." It wasn't a grand ending. It was a Tuesday. The dryer beeped. The cat next door complained. A siren moved past without finding her street. Nia stretched her fingers like athletes do after practice. She whispered the words she had heard written twice in rooms where the truth had been delivered by people not invited to speak, smiling at the way Lillian had made it a joke in a card and a dare to the future. Like and subscribe for more stories that challenge prejudice and celebrate courage. She put her phone down. She turned off the kitchen light. She stood in the doorway and let the hallway lamp throw a soft angle across her floor like the first frame of a film that would not shout about itself. Then she went to bed, not triumphant, just sure. According to the city, it was an ordinary night. According to the people at the coalition's Tuesday meeting, it had been a good day. According to the reality of how policy moves, it had been one of those days that stack under a moment until it can finally stand. According to the old woman at the center of it, it was tea and lemon and a piece of paper taken out of a sleeve and put where it could no longer be ignored. And according to Nia, it was the day a room learned to listen to hands without being told it was a miracle. In a world where power hears itself too well, sometimes the waitress is the microphone, and sometimes being heard is justice.